You take the blue pill. The story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill. You stay in Wonderland. And I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
A mighty nation, blessed above all of creation. It was a rare and precious pearl, conceived in faith and liberty, home of the brave, land of the free. It was the envy of the world. But this shining city on a hill has turned from the Creator's will and let evil take control. Now the reckless men who lead them want to strip away their freedom and to steal their very soul. Now it's smoke and mirrors, switching bait, criticize and confiscate and let the guilty walk away. In this once righteous, godly nation, in the halls of education, they forbid a child to pray. They say we need to spread the wealth. They pretend to guard the health of the feeble and the poor, while the hand they hold behind their back confuses and conceals the fact that the wolf is at the door. There's an unseen hand.
Today I've got a very, very good friend who, her brother was an extremely good friend of mine. Bob Fanning passed on about a year and a half ago. Bob and I were terrific friends. Bob was on my show a number of times, and through him I met his sister Mary, who is an absolutely incredible human being, knows just about everybody in the intelligence community, and she is so well connected, has so many great things that she can bring to the world, and I'm really excited to have her and Alan Jones on today. Mary, thank you. Alan, thank you for being our guest. Before we go into the program, however, I would like to give Thumper an opportunity to talk about the gubernatorial primary race in Washington. Thumper, would you like to tell the listeners what's going on in that, and what, I mean, we were talking about the dirty politics of the left, the dirty politics of the communists. It isn't even dirty, it's filthy, and what you've got to talk about, I think, is important for the people to hear.
Thank you very much, Dan, and good afternoon again, everybody. From my show earlier this morning and and Dan's show, I got word from the Lauren Culp campaign that the voter pamphlets that are provided by the Secretary of State's office that they send out to everybody before they send out our mail-in ballots here in Washington State. And has a little bio on everybody that's in the race. And the GOP side of the ballot has a total of I believe it's 35 or 36 individuals that are running for governor in the state of Washington under the GOP ticket. That is not a coincidence. It is contrived. It's a way of diluting the ballot. But at the same time, what they also did was a lot of times we would already be receiving our pamphlets, and then shortly thereafter the ballots will come in. Well, they just found out that the pamphlets are either being mailed out now or very soon to be mailed out, but they left Lauren Culp off the ballot. Okay. His name doesn't appear. There's no bio or anything about him, what his campaign, what his views are, anything like that. Out of the 35 individuals that are running for governor here in the state of Washington, Lauren is by far leading the field. as far as GOP candidates in social media, actual real fundraising. He's leading the field. There's more campaign signs throughout the state that people have paid for to have in their yards. We didn't just hand them out. People have paid for these signs, which is a real indication of the tremendous support that he is gaining in the state. And as anybody knows what he talks about private property rights, the right to life, and just so many things. He's absolutely 100% a constitutional conservative. Gun rights are a big thing. That's what got him the notoriety when he pushed back against the Washington State Initiative 1639 a few years ago. It was draconian at best in what it did to try to stifle our Second Amendment rights here in the state of Washington. And as the police chief of Republic Washington, he came out and he stood his ground and said that he would not enforce Initiative 1639 in his city. That, in turn, caused several sheriffs throughout the state to reach down and check their kahunas to see if they had a pair and either stand with him or stand with the Democrats and our anti-gun governor and our anti-gun attorney general. So you add all that together, we are definitely seeing this is not just our Secretary of State is a Republican, I believe. Kim Wyman is a Republican. She is responsible. The Secretary of State's office is responsible for putting out these voter pamphlets. This is how this could have happened is beyond me. He will be on the ballot. Okay, his name will be on the ballot. It's just his name is not in the voter pamphlet. And so what a lot of people will do, they'll sit down with their voter pamphlet and look through all the different initiatives and see what it says and all that, because a lot of this isn't advertised prior to the pamphlet coming out and the actual ballot showing up at your home, unless there's something on the ballot that is of particular importance to you and you may know about it coming up on the ballot. So this is definitely a suppression technique that those that would like to have their control over Lauren. The Republican Party has not been very friendly in the campaign. I can't say anything more than that as far as, because I don't know much more than that, but it's just and they want to get one of their tried and true swamp rats back in there, somebody that they can control. That's my personal opinion. That's just my personal opinion on the matter. But this is lower than low. This is crappy politics at its pinnacle, in my opinion. And so anybody out there, the word needs to get out that this is dirty, this is crappy, and we are going to be in a different mode on the campaign from here on out. So.
Okay, well, good. Thumper, all I can say is that we've seen that happening all over our country for now several decades, and what happened during the Trump campaign in 2016 and everything that's happened since then, all I can say is that, boy, are we in trouble if we allow this to continue to happen. And with that, I absolutely have to tell you, my guests today, Mary Fanning and Alan Jones, are two people who know more about the intelligence community and the things that are going on behind the scenes in Washington, D.C. and around the country than any two people that I've ever met. And Mary, I want to, first I'll welcome you and then I'll welcome Alan, but I want you to tell the folks a little bit about some of the projects that you've worked on, like the Coalition for Concerned Citizens, the America Report, some of the things that you've been working on with Alan.
Oh, first, Dan, it is so nice to be with you always. You're so well informed, so it's just such a pleasure to speak with you. Alan and I have been working together, for I'd say 6 years now. Mm-hmm. And before that, I went to General Paul Vallely, a tried and true patriot who understands what an oath to the country really means. And I said to General Vallely, at that point we were watching the journal list. And I'll refresh your memory. If you remember, under Barack Obama, there was a group of supposed journalists, well-known journalists, who were working in concert to bring out the same message so that they would make sure that it was everywhere. The only problem was the messaging was lies, bold-faced lies. And so with General Vallely, we decided to reverse engineer the journal list and put together a coalition of concerned citizens that was retired military, Alan West, and people who had been in all of the agencies who actually believed in the oath they took to the Constitution and to protect this country. And so there was a good number of us that came together, including journalists and others that had websites, and we carried a message in coordination with one another and did research together. And in that, we did the Qatar Awareness Program. So initially, I went to General Valley, and I can tell you, I remember exactly the moment I called General Valley, and he was on top of a mountain. And he happened to be with a good friend of mine that I'd known since my college days. And I said, we would like to bring the truth to the American people. We cannot sit on the sidelines while the American people are being brainwashed by the lying, corrupt, fake mainstream media. So we began working together, and our first project was Qatar Awareness. And that was very important because what that was, and I really wanted to make sure that as we did that we had two military bases there. I did not want to adversely affect our military. But what we were seeing was with ISNA and the Muslim Brotherhood, they were taking the crown jewels of our education system and corporate system, and they were moving the Georgetown School of Foreign Service into Education City in Qatar. They were moving Cornell School of Medicine, Northwestern. They were moving specific programs into Qatar. And you have to understand, a good deal of this, if people understand what was happening in the Middle East, they had to have concerns that they were no longer going to have the same monies coming out of the oil business. And so they were attempting to diversify. However, instead of just diversifying, they were infiltrating. And the people who were in place under Barack Obama, he not only put them through our entire government structure, but then he started moving parts of our, structure as Americans over into Qatar. So we decided to start exposing that because they weren't working in the same legal manner that we would as Americans and under our rule of law. And so that needed to be exposed, and expose it we did. And it was very effective. So effective that some of the people we exposed sued us, but that didn't go very well for them. And so the next project that we went into was the Betrayal Papers. And the Betrayal Papers exposed who Obama was, who he was, so to speak, in bed with, and what they were attempting to do to this country. And so we did a 6-piece series called The Betrayal Papers, and that got great play, and it exposed Barack Obama his connections to Bill Ayers, that guy that's just in his neighborhood, and the Weathermen, and those connections to George Soros, and really the global communists, and those in this country that he had put in place in his administration who were not seeking to protect America. They were seeking to redistribute America. They were seeking to become the communist oligarchs out of the United States of America. And if you remember, with the TARP fund, so many things happened. They gave the Class A stock to the union. Now imagine that. This is wholly owned, privately owned Class A stock that people had owned for a long time. There were also, car agencies that were simply redistributed. Now, if that isn't communism, I don't know what is. But a lot of that was taking place, and of course, there was no one on the wall watching and protecting this country, because the media was incredibly and remains incredibly corrupt, as well as hardcore communists. So we went from there, and Alan and I did a really interesting piece that gets so much play today, and it's clues to Barack Obama's mysterious ID. And what we started looking at was the going back and going through FBI files, we found the connections from Barack Obama directly into his campaign with Soviet Silvermaster to the Soviet Silvermaster spy ring. And we revealed that Victor Margolin, whose parents had been Benjamin and Olya Margolin, she had been working with the refugee resettlement program, bringing, communists and Nazis into the country, and they were refugees from Eastern Europe, communists. There was an enormous infiltration of our government agencies with these people. The idea that McCarthy, this idea of quote McCarthyism, is ludicrous. McCarthy was right. This was a huge infiltration of communists into our country. And so as we started looking at the FBI files, and we revealed the Margolins and Frank Marshall Davis, and he was declared a Soviet spy on a watch list, that should anything happen with Russia and that we broke out into any difficulties with Russia, he was to immediately be arrested. So this is Barack Obama's mentor. But not only that, we were able to expose that Valerie Jarrett, his longtime friend and mentor, and Michelle Obama's mentor from the time that she was at a law firm just beginning, that she was connected to Alfred Stern, a Soviet spy, and his wife Madeline Dodd. And when they exposed and went to arrest Alfred Stern, he fled the country. At the same time, Valerie Jarrett's father left to Iran to work at the Namazi hospital. The entire claptrap about all the racism in Chicago, that he had to go to Iran to escape this, it had much more to do with the fact that Alfred Stern had just been arrested. They went to arrest him, and he and his wife, Madeline Dodd, fled the country, ended up in Moscow and then back in Cuba, and I think, which is where he died. And so not only was Valerie Jarrett's father-in-law involved with Alfred Stern, but so too was her mother, and so was her father and her grandfather and father. They went together into low-income housing, which is interesting in itself, because oftentimes low-income housing is a great way for communists to take over in this country and to have really a backdoor into our treasury, where they're receiving monies galore for, and if you've ever looked into low-income housing, it's ludicrous. You build these buildings, and they charge people in them, say, $12 or $20 to live in them, and then they charge the government $800 a month, which is covered in the entitlement program. So the Robert Taylor homes were Valerie Jarrett's father and grandfather's business dealings with Alfred Stern.
Yeah,
So they know how to pluck our system.
Oh, they do. And Mary, I have to throw this in. This has been talked about for quite a while, but Frank Marshall Davis looks an awful lot more like Barry Soetoro than Barry Soetoro looks like his supposed Kenyan father.
He has no resemblance to his Kenyan father whatsoever. Tribally, they don't match at all in the shape of his head, his face. There are certain things that you pay attention to, not to mention his strong communist belief system. But beyond that, Frank Marshall Davis, if you look at him, actually, we did a couple papers, Dan, that were so interesting. We noticed that the airport pictures with little Barack Obama as a sort of a 9 or 10-year-old little boy had been photoshopped. And we particularly noticed, and as you look at those pictures, you'll see that the hand that's around Barack, and he's holding both arms with that hand to his chest, is not really attached properly to the man that supposedly he's standing with, his supposed father. And so we looked at the fine details, and then we started, we found some FBI video, and it was that they were interviewing Frank Marshall Davis, and he was incredibly arrogant and sort of on his last leg and kind of taunting the FBI about what they weren't going to find out, what he was up to. But we'd noticed when we went through pictures that you never saw Frank Marshall Davis's hands, and that stood out for us. So we started looking at the pictures in the airport where the hand was not connected properly to the shoulder. And we noticed that the fingernails, there was something wrong with them. And then we went to the FBI video, and we saw that those same club nails are a disease that you get from having heart disease and heart and lung disease. And so we were able to determine that the hand that little Barack was holding and Frank Marshall Davis's hands all had clubbed fingernails. So we were pretty certain that he was trying to hide his association with Frank Marshall Davis. But really, as we looked at Barack Obama, we knew that if you look at pictures of him, you know that he's had 2 nose jobs, right? Mm-hmm. And so if you look at him as a younger man, a very young man, you can see the difference in his nose, and then you can see another surgery later. And then you start to see the big fat pads under his lower lip and the similarities to the jaw and so much, and most particularly even the voice. That is a very deep and bellowing voice, very much like Frank Marshall Davis. But, as we looked into his history and this isn't like we're finding this, that somebody thought this or another person thought this. This is from the FBI vault. These are strictly documents from the FBI vault. And, we found that Frank Marshall Davis with Harry Hay were together as the precursor of NAMBLA, the Man-Boy Love Association, trying to legalize pedophilia. And I dare say, if anyone looks around at the vile things that you could never have imagined until this Jeffrey Epstein and his, I think that Ghislaine was actually running Jeffrey based upon her father's history, Robert Maxwell working for the Russians and the Mossad, etc. But this was an operation of blackmail and leverage to blackmail people, and then, God forbid, who these looking into this pedophile ring and Epstein Island and everything, for the first time, Americans see on their own land, in their own country, and understand the true meaning of evil. Evil. Who in God's name takes children and does the things that are being reported that took place on Epstein Island? Who in their right mind could do that to a child?
No, I agree. And of course, the name of our program today is dealing with the second Bolshevik Revolution. And I think one of the things that have come out of the articles that you and Alan have been working on for years is that we really are right now in a battle between good and evil, a battle between the forces of darkness and good, and we are in a battle right now between our constitutional Republican form of government, which is being attacked very openly by Marxists and communists and people who want to destroy our civil society and end Christianity in America. And so that's in a nutshell what we're going to be talking about today. And you've done so much research on how this government has been under Donald Trump has been absolutely attacked from all angles by so many people, and it's so obvious what's going on. We need to get this in front of the American people. We need to make sure that they understand this isn't some little game. This is for all the marbles, and if we don't win in November and start taking our country back, we're going to be seeing things that we couldn't even have imagined 5 years ago.
That is so true, Dan. We are at the abyss. We are about to go over the falls. If the American people do not stand up, if they do not stand shoulder to shoulder, General Flynn just put out a piece, which is brilliant, of course, at Western Journalism. And he tells that if we sit here and do nothing, if we do not stand for our country, we will let 2% take over the other 98% and basically do not understand that this is just, a different form of government, socialism. Socialism is communism. It's the same bus stop. It's the same path. If we let the communists take over, the lights will go out in America. The shining city on the hill will be destroyed, but if the lights go out here, they will go out everywhere. It is so important to understand it won't be the soft communism now that they have full control. It will not be the soft communism of Europe. It will be the hard communism of North Korea, where there are no lights, where they kill people at will, or China, where they say, here's a virus, and now we come to find that they put people who weren't even dead in body bags and fed them into those furnaces. This is beyond anything the American people can understand. This second Bolshevik revolution is for all the marbles. This is to take America down. Obama spent his 8 years redistributing us, infecting us, bringing a communist into the body politic, you did not have by accident. James, I used to be a communist. I don't know what I am now. Comey is the FBI director for no reason. Mm-hmm. You had a communist at the head of the FBI. You had a communist in John Brennan, a self-admitted communist who voted for Gus Hall. You know that Barack Obama has been steeped in communism. And if Americans are so trusting, they're so good-hearted, they don't like to think bad things about people. But at the same time, if you're going to let them take your country, understand what they will do to your children, right, your parents, your country. It's going back to understand what's taking place. People need to understand the mad scientist, the Alexander Dugin. He was the man who taught not only Medvedev, but Putin. And they talked about the new Euro-Asian empire, where they would expand their empire. And people noticed, you must have noticed, that one of the first things that happened under Obama is as the Polish government went to fly in, and the Russians had them fly to a particular base where their plane could land, where they were going to honor all the Poles that had been killed during World War II and shot in the forest, etc. And as that plane came in, they shot that plane out of the air. That didn't just crash. There's more to the story. But most importantly, Barack Obama never even investigated. He never said a word. In fact, the next thing he did was take down our missile defense system for Poland and leave them at the will of the Russians, just like he did to the Ukraine, just as he did as he turned over parts of the Ukraine. And, you know, you have to look at what Alexander Dugin said the new Euro-Asian Empire would be. He had 4 pillars to that, and they were going to take a conflation of communism and Nazism. So all those moments in time where people were arguing under Obama, is this Nazism? Is this communism? You know, I had that, as I like to call it, that Chinatown moment. If you've ever seen the movie Chinatown, and when Faye Dunaway is, you know, being slapped, and he says, "Who is this woman?" And she says, "It's my sister." And then he slaps her again and says, "It's my daughter. It's my sister. It's my daughter. It's both." Well, once we understood that the Russians and the Chinese, that they were embracing a conflation of communism and Nazism, and they were putting in place their global religion, Gaia, global warming. It is Luciferianism. 1,000 Points of Light is a direct reference to Luciferianism.
Yeah, Mary, I think it's important for everyone to understand that UN Agenda 21 is at the heart of this whole program, this whole communist program, and that under UN Agenda 21, 93% of the world's population will be eliminated. Now, exterminated is probably a better term. That means that 7 billion people will be killed or eliminated, and people better wake up. It's one thing to be naive, but it's something totally different to be stupid. And to ignore what's going on right now is being stupid.
Yes, it is. These people have told you who they are. They have told you that they want to kill you. Believe them. Believe them when they tell you. Beyond which, remember in the Obama administration when they came in, the first thing they did was they passed out the book Animal Spirits. Understand, they look at the American people as their herd, as animals, as people that they need to manage. They have no respect. And it's interesting, Dan, they have no respect for the intellect of the American people. But I will tell you, upon visiting on Capitol Hill and meetings on Capitol Hill, and I hope some of our congressmen and senators, et cetera, are listening. There's some that aren't like this, but most are. My big takeaway was, my God, these people are stupid. I have, you know, I've been blessed to, you know people who are well educated and live in those circles, but I had never seen such stupidity. I had never seen such stupidity as Capitol Hill.
I agree with that, and I always think of John Adams' statement, those who fail to participate in representative government are bound to be led by their inferiors. Boy, is that ever true in Washington, D.C., and it is definitely a swamp. I want to get Alan into the conversation, but Mary, I want to, first of all, I want you to tell our listeners about the foreign surveillance tool, the Hammer, because you've done a lot of work on how that all came about and how it was hijacked by the Obama administration with the help of Brennan and Clapper to spy on Americans. It was originally intended as a foreign spying operation, but they turned it around by moving it, relocating it, and bringing it so that they could use it to spy on American people, and how that impacted Donald Trump and certainly General Flynn.
Well, Dan, in 2003, after 9/11, a CIA contractor who was in an SAP program. Your listeners probably understand, now what an SAP program is. We never knew what an SAP program was before, because until Hillary Clinton's emails were exposed, many generals didn't know that there was an SAP program above top secret intelligence. Anyway, Dennis Montgomery he's a computer genius, bar none. And it's interesting. They keep trying to say, oh, the NSA did this. No, it wasn't the NSA. It was the CIA every step of the way, who has no right to spy in America. They have no charter. Anyway, Dennis Montgomery went to work for and he created a foreign surveillance tool to keep America safe after 9/11. According to military sources, multiple military sources, the hammer worked. It was watching terrorists, and it was keeping our men safer, helping them in the battlefield. It was strictly a foreign surveillance system from 2003 until February 3rd, 2009, when Barack Obama took office. John Brennan and James Clapper commandeered the hammer with Barack Obama, and they moved it to Fort Washington in Maryland, where they proceeded to illegally spy on Supreme Court justices, head of the FISA court, business leaders, members of Congress,
Donald J. Trump.
Oh, Donald J. Trump and General Flynn more than anyone, because they feared him. But they were also taking information from law firms, intellectual property law. They were spying on people. But beyond that, Barack Obama had an encrypted VPN so that he could access the hammer at will. And so if you wonder why all those questionable unmaskings took place, then you understand that they could unmask at will. Because understand, when one was to sign on to the hammer, there were multiple echelons of safeguards and sign-offs. You had to go through 17 agencies to get proof to do any unmasking, just one, including the President of the United States, could not go and access the system without going through those systems. So imagine that. It was so powerful that they didn't want anyone to access this without the FISA court, without going through every one of these safeguards. And then they simply stole it, and they turned it against the American people. Montgomery was initially working. This is stunning. This is worthy of the Stasi and the Nazis and every evil, corrupt, totalitarian state that's ever darkened the globe. And for them to take this and turn it against American people, they were turning America into a Stasi-style police state.
Well, Mary, it's even worse than the communists and the Nazis and the people who preceded them, because now the technology is so incredible that they literally can control everything we do. Isn't that right?
It is so vast, which is why to have these safeguards on to protect our constitutional republic was key. Now, this is, it's important to understand something that just happened recently. Richard Grenell, who had been the acting head of the intelligence director, who had replaced Clapper and has now moved on, but he dropped information like no one else has. He came out and he said, well, they were spying on Flynn and Kislyak. And so, the DNI comes out and he says, yeah, they were spying on Flynn and Kislyak, but, and this is very important, it wasn't our product. So the product that was being used to spy on Flynn cannot be tracked back to any of our 17 intelligence agencies. So whose product was it? Who was spying on General Flynn with Kislyak? Because it doesn't track back to any of our intelligence agencies. So understand that Flynn had been the head of our Defense Intelligence Agency. And if he's the director of the DIA, and it's not our product, which, by the way, there was no reason to that means either a foreign entity was Russia spying and giving the information to Barack Obama, or China because it wasn't our product. It was not our product. So was it the hammer? Why are there no footprints that can trail where this product came from that was spying on General Flynn? Now, interesting, which is not usually mentioned in the press, the corrupt mainstream media, is the fact that Kislyak got in touch with Flynn, for Flynn to call him, not vice versa. Though there was nothing wrong with Flynn as a national security advisor to be in touch with anyone, in the transition. That has happened multiple times. Initially, they tried to hang the Logan Act violation on Flynn, which was ludicrous. And, by the way, if there had ever been a Logan Act violation, it was, in fact, Barack Obama, who sent his people in 2008 before he was even had won a primary at all, and told Iran that he would have a better deal for them through Ambassador William Green Miller than President Bush would. So if anyone had a Logan Act violation, it was in fact Barack Obama. Not that those have been prosecuted, not ever. Mm-hmm. So all of this was a setup, a complete and utter setup. And they were spying, according to Dennis Montgomery, not only on the Supreme Court justices and Donald Trump, but also on General Flynn. And one of the reasons they were spying on General Flynn is because he had come out and he had said that Barack Obama, armed in a willful decision, knew that he was arming our adversaries, ISIS and Al-Qaeda, shipping weapons into Syria through 2 ports. And and we say things like Barack Obama was arming ISIS and Al-Qaeda. Think about that. These are the people that are killing our troops, that are setting the explosive devices to blow their limbs off, and they're being armed through our State Department, through Barack Obama and John Brennan.
Oh, yeah.
It boggles the mind. Can you imagine a president arming our adversaries to kill our people? And beyond which, ISIS and ISIS, they conducted a genocide of Christians, 500,000 Christians across the Middle East. Beyond good Muslims and other good religions and other minority religions. You never even heard that talked about in our media, that they took out all the Christian antiquities out of Damascus and destroyed them in churches, that there was a genocide being, the most we ever saw was that idiot holding up a cardboard saying, "Bring back our girls." Dan, we have satellites. If you steal a school full of Christian girls and turn them into sex slaves, we could have gotten them back in short order.
Sure.
That was vile.
Well, that's the thing that's so irritating right now, and I don't want to get off track, but that's the thing that's so irritating. All the things they accuse us of, all the things that they accuse Donald Trump of, are the things that they're guilty of in spades. And, people don't talk about the fact that slavery is more prevalent today around the world than it has ever been. And it's prevalent because of all the child trafficking, all the Islamic groups that are taking slaves, have been forever. I mean, it's part of the culture. There is so much going on, and yet all they want to do is talk about Black Lives Matter, and we're going to get into that. I want Alan to join us on that discussion because I know he's done a lot of research, and the fact that Black Lives Matter is very much a communist organization, just like Antifa is. Isn't that right, Alan?
Absolutely. By the way, thank you so much for bringing us back on the program today.
You guys are terrific. I look so much forward to hearing you.
So you've probably seen the video that's been making the rounds here of one of the founders of Black Lives Matter admitting during an interview that they are trained Marxists. So this is the same old playbook the communists have been using to take down one country after another. Now, usually they've targeted smaller third world countries over the latter half of the 20th century, but they've always wanted to take down their biggest target of all, which is the United States. But they're using the same playbook they've always used, and they've depended on divide and conquer, which is to find the weak point in a society's fabric and then use that to pull the fabric apart and tear the entire country down. And so they've been trying to exploit any kind of racial tension in a country, and instead of healing the country and bringing it together, they're throwing gasoline on it and trying to ignite a civil war. And that's what we're looking at today. This has been a strategy that was put forward by individuals like Bill Ayers, who you mentioned earlier. And what you're seeing now is them taking this and running with it as we're heading toward an election and creating mass chaos and instability. And when a country becomes less and less stable, it becomes more susceptible to military attack. So you destabilize the culture, you destabilize law and order, and then final stage is to move to a kinetic warfare, which would be in the 21st century an advanced form of warfare beyond anything we saw in World War II, with EMP weapons, which would bring down the power grid, cyber weapons, which would bring our communications and financial sectors to a standstill, pandemics, melting down nuclear power plants. I mean, you name it. This could just be the early stages we're in right now. And so get your seatbelt tightened.
I think I've been hearing a lot of people, very knowledgeable people, talk about how this election may not even happen as a result of all the corrupt things that are going on, and that in fact they plan on disrupting and creating so much chaos that we can't have a fair and honest election. I think that's a extremely good possibility based on what they've done with the COVID-19, what they've done with all the the riots, the Black Lives Matter stuff. I mean, they talk about everybody's got to stay home and everybody's got to wear a mask and you can't go out in public, but yet when Black Lives Matter and all these groups get out and tear up cities and burn down businesses and destroy everything, they don't say a word about people not being together. They don't even, in matter of fact, they give them a free pass.
Well, what the public needs to understand is that they've essentially been brainwashed into understanding one version of 20th century history, which is absolutely not correct. That version tells them that the Cold War ended, the Berlin Wall came down, the Soviet Union ceased to exist, the KGB ceased to exist, there's democracy in Russia. We don't need to build up our military. We need to build down our military like they did with the base realignment and closure, stuff that happened mostly under Bill Clinton and some under H.W. Bush, in which the number of U.S. military bases that we had was whittled down to basically a skeleton version of what we had during the Cold War. And, we don't have nearly as many Air Force bases for the long-range strategic bombers like the B-52s and the B-1s and the B-2s. Our submarine force needs to be rebuilt. And the same thing has been happening with NATO. The German military doesn't have the ammunition that they need. Barack Obama pulled the M1 Abrams tanks out of Germany after over 60 years of continuous presence to basically be there ready to confront the Soviets if they ever tried to invade Western Europe. So that's always been the objective. Look at what the leadership of Russia is today. Vladimir Putin. Who is Vladimir Putin? He's a former KGB spy. He worked with the Stasi in East Germany. And he's mentioned that he still likes communism. He still looks at Joseph Stalin as a hero. He's created a new quote-unquote patriotism in Russia in which they view Stalin as the hero of World War II. So that's sort of the strategic game plan right now. With that in the background and with the buildup of the militaries of Russia and China, which they received tremendous assistance from the Obama administration, specifically Barack Obama and Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, in transferring, various technologies to them. They've built up their naval forces, their missile technology. They're into hypersonic missiles at this point. All that's going on. Then all of a sudden, we have an attempted coup here in the United States. These operatives with connections to communism like John Brennan and James Comey, who said once, "I used to be a communist. I don't know what I am anymore." John Brennan voted for Gus Hall, presidential candidate in 1976, who was CP-USA. He was a Stalinist. So in other words, he supported Joseph Stalin, who killed tens of millions of people. So they've always been grasping for the White House. You could argue that FDR actually put communists in the White House. Obviously, we've provided a lot of evidence that Barack Obama has deep ties to the Soviet Silver Master Ring. So all that's going on. Here we are in 2020. What's going on right now? We have a pandemic, the origins of which remain murky, but it came from communist China. There have been a lot of evidence that China covered up what happened. Actually, a Chinese scientist just defected to the United States, is seeking protection. She's bringing a lot of information with her. All that's going on. We have social unrest in the wake of the George Floyd death in Milwaukee. And then on top of all that, the threat from Russia and China has never gone away. So if you were a war planner sitting in the Kremlin or sitting in Beijing with the People's Liberation Army, you're going to be watching this and looking for any sign of weakness. How can we take down the United States? So that's really the strategic chessboard that we're looking at right now. So Americans need to understand that, yes, they need to, they need to take care of their health. They need to maintain, Minneapolis. George Floyd was Minneapolis. They need to maintain their personal safety, use their Second Amendment rights to protect their home. But we need to keep our eye. We need to keep our eye not just on Minneapolis, but what Moscow and Beijing are doing with their militaries. And we need to be prepared at any time, unfortunately, for a military attack that could involve the Club K container missile system, which we've covered with our coverage of Gulf Tainer. They can bring in Russian cruise missiles into the United States and strike our military bases and our population centers. But that's kind of the big picture right now.
Mm-hmm. Well, and you have done a great job of exposing that, but I think what we need to, I want you folks to talk about the Flynn case, because we've got a real concern, and this is something that Mary and I talked about before the program. If General Flynn doesn't prevail in this case, I think it's curtains for the judicial system in this country, because it's pretty much an open-ended thing for collusion and every kind of Mickey Mouse surveillance state thing that's been going on. And I don't think President Trump can win this battle by himself.
Well, I think you're right that the Michael Flynn case is critical. Correct. Mary will explain that to you.
Yeah, it's General Flynn. First of all, it was a complete and utter setup. The whole thing was a scam. There was no Russia collusion. It was a delusion. It was, as General McInerney likes to say, it was tactical. This was tactical deception. They were distracting the people because General Thomas McInerney had come out onto America's airwaves and he had told about the hammer. You can look at the timeline, and from the time that General McInerney came out on March 17th, 2017, on Operation Freedom, and brought our piece, the whistleblower tapes, to America's airwaves, when the IG released the Strzok and Page text, we found that they were texting one another within minutes of General McInerney being on the airwaves talking about the hammer, this much worse than Watergate system that had to be investigated, that Brennan, Clapper, and Obama had stolen in order to attack their political enemies. We found that Strzok and Page within minutes were texting one another and talking about Dennis Montgomery, the man who created the hammer. The very next, so that day, General McInerney comes on air that Sunday afternoon, late Sunday afternoon. The next morning, Monday morning, FBI Director James Comey comes out before Congress and announces the Russia collusion investigation, of which didn't exist. And who did he appoint to be in charge of it? Well, none other than Peter Strzok, who had just the night before with his well, what do you call her?
Lover.
His mistress, I suppose is the nicest word.
Yeah.
With his mistress, and he's texting the night before about Dennis Montgomery, and then FBI Director James Comey, he puts Peter Strzok in charge of the Russia collusion investigation, who we already know said that there was no there, same as James Clapper, but they lied. And they lied for 3 years. And they let all these vile lies sit before the American people as they were lying about the president on a daily basis. It was one storm of vile lies after another, only going into the impeachment, when finally Rosenstein, who knew all along this was a complete and utter fabrication, he finally ponied up to the truth not all that long ago. So they stole 3+ years from the American people of the president that they duly elected to put in the White House. And by the way, never, ever before in our history have we seen a previous president put together an attack machine and try to have the subsequent president impeached and destroyed. And this is, people, I hope they understand what this is, how the things that are being put before us, what the mainstream media has done, what the Democrats, who are not Democrats, that's a joke. They're communists. They're hardcore communists. And unfortunately, a lot of them are involved in some of this pedophilia. And by the way, a lot of them are involved also going way back with Margaret Sanger. You can track them. They're all involved in abortions. And, you know, this abortion business is strictly a laundering facility for monies for the DNC. But the idea that all these people, it's really so evil that they're so strongly supporting abortion. Doesn't that say something to us about who these people? They're kind of anti-American. Is this who we are as a people? I mean, think about.
No, go ahead.
Cuomo.
But I was thinking
Cuomo, that you can kill him.
I was thinking about the 50 million Americans who have been aborted over the last 40 years under Planned Parenthood. And many of those, a very significant percentage of those, are black. And, you know, we talk about Black Lives Matter, unborn Black Lives Matter even more, because they don't have any opportunity to have a voice.
No, and beyond that, we just found that Judge Sullivan, who is going after, who thinks he's now judge, jury, and prosecutor, going after General Flynn in just a unbelievable, illegal persecution of General Flynn. You know, his uncle was an abortionist, and he had a big case where he was charged with someone's death in one of his abortions, and he took that to the higher courts and, said this was about protecting your body and everyone's allowed to have abortions, any abortion, So now civil rights is the right to kill as many black babies as possible, and this is the swamp that Judge Sullivan comes out of, that civil rights is actually the right to kill your baby. Anyone who's held a baby in their arms, for Pete's sake, who could do this to their own flesh and blood? This is just evil.
It is. There's no question about it. Well, Mary, I want you and Alan to talk about this latest report that you did about Biden and his campaign advisor. I'd love to hear your comments on that, and I have seen that video with her talking about how her one of her favorite philosophers is Chairman Mao. Anyway, let's go ahead and talk about that, because Anita Dunn is a real piece of work, no question about it.
Well, first, let me just set the stage. Both Anita Dunn and Speaker Pelosi, I used to think that they were chewing gum all the time, and then I realized that they're probably on psychotropic drugs with the tongue peek that they do all the time. The tongue coming out of their mouth is so bizarre. Anyway, Anita Dunn got up in front of a graduating class, a high school graduating class, and had the temerity to tell them that her favorite philosopher was Mao. Mao that killed 100 million of his own people, that guy. So not only did she say that under the Obama administration, where we then found that the Obama White House, their first Christmas tree had Mao Zedong ornaments on it. Imagine celebrating the birth of Christ with probably the worst murderer in human history, Mao. Anyway, it defies the imagination. But Anita Dunn, who loves Mao, the mass murderer, and no doubt she's quite fond of Stalin and Hitler as well. Anita Dunn is the senior campaign advisor for none other than Joe Biden. So people, if you know what is coming and you know the affection that these people have for communism and the evil that they embrace, I suggest you get very, very busy and start standing up for this president. Whether you like his manners, his language, or anything else, your life depends upon Joe Biden not being elected and Donald Trump being put back in this White House. America depends upon the American people standing shoulder to shoulder against this evil to take back our country. Joe Biden is a longtime communist, just like Anita Dunn. Joe Biden was put in office by the people connected to the Soviet Silver Master spy ring, who put in place the Council for a Livable World. Those people were connected to Armand Hammer, who was a Soviet agent, and he was working with none other than Senator Al Gore Sr. Al Gore Sr. and Al Gore, that's why he chose some of the people he did when he was Clinton's vice president to put them into office. You can read about that in our piece on Woolsey and Flynn, which ought to make your, really, people, if you understand what we're looking at, you would be out there working for Donald Trump every day. And you cannot understand how important what we're looking at. Joe Biden has been a communist since day one. Can you imagine any other person getting away with, oh, my son's got $1.5 million, dirty deal in China from the Chinese bank that's owned by the Communist Party, doesn't do business with anyone that you're not buying off. And, oh, yeah, he got another billion. Did I say million before? Because it's billion.
Billion, yeah.
Billions. And then he got another $1 billion out of the Ukraine. But we're going to talk about Donald Trump look sideways at, God knows what. It is a fabrication. Everything that the left tells you is a lie. These bloodthirsty communists are trying to get at the American people. They don't like them. They want to take their country. And if the American people don't stand up, No one's coming to save us, people.
No.
We are the people that we are waiting for. It's time to stand up. And these Antifa, this isn't just happening. Did you understand that Antifa and Black Lives Matter, that these people, these communists, were actually trained in Iraq and Syria? Mm-hmm. Imagine what little tricks they've got in their bag of tricks.
Oh, yeah. Well, and Mary, the thing that comes out on all this stuff, too, is that in our highest levels of government, the collusion goes everywhere. And if they don't have you directly connected to this communist crap, they've figured out a way to blackmail you into acquiescence. And we think that's why so much of the pedophilia and so many of the other things, the Epstein thing, I mean, it's all connected together. The dots all connect. Blackmail and leverage. Yeah.
The dots all connect. You know, in the whistleblower tapes, I encourage everyone to go and read the first piece in this series when we expose the whistleblower tapes. When they tell you that Justice John Roberts, Chief Justice John Roberts, was under surveillance by the Hammer, and then you see just his opinion that he wrote for the Affordable Care Act for Obamacare. And his entire opinion leads one to the conclusion that it is illegal. And at the very last sentence, he simply flips and says, yep, it's a tax. You know, you can't believe other than he is being blackmailed. And two, anyone who's in Washington, D.C. certainly understands one book today, and that's the book that the Chinese put out, which is Unrestricted Warfare. They told they were going to hit us with one bioweapon and then another and then attack. And so anyone who gives a hoot about anyone in their family or this country understands that we are looking down the barrel of a gun. Mm-hmm. And it's a lot more than just a gun.
No, it's we are looking at the destruction of our country as we know it, and that's why it's so important that you folks tell our listeners exactly how this whole thing came about. So I'm leaving that open for you because obviously John Kerry's stepson was also involved with Hunter Biden in the China deal. And this stuff goes everywhere. The tentacles run everywhere. It's unbelievable how many people are involved in this, isn't it?
Well, you really have to go back to John Kerry's father before him was connected to communists at the United Nations. John Kerry, by the way, isn't John Kerry. He's not from Ireland as he pretended. He is from Hungary. His name is John Cohen from Hungary. They were pretty much like George Soros. Gorgie Schwartz is his real name. They were Jews from Hungary who came to the United States for freedom, but for some reason their brains got scrambled and they got on the wrong side of history. And everyone is well aware that John Kerry is an evil man. And what he did in Vietnam and the lies that he told and his fake medals and the amount of our troops that had been held as prisoners of war, POWs, when they were offered back to us, John Kerry put himself in charge of the POWs along with John McCain and made sure that none of those men could come back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, John McCain was just as dirty as Kerry. I mean, there's we talk about this frequently, but the swamp is very, very deep, and it's got both parties. So this isn't a party thing. This is those who believe in freedom against those who believe in Marxism and communism.
It's our bureaucrats. It's anyone in a position of power is being blackmailed and leveraged. The Hammer changes everything. There's no one that's not under serious surveillance. Your every phone call, every text message, every picture. They can take your bank records. They can look at everything that you do. And they did. And they're blackmailing and leveraging this country into the abyss, into a communist, well, let's use the word shithole that the president used, because that's where we're going if the American people don't stand up.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, Alan, I know that you have worked with Mary on uncovering some of the things that have gone on with the Hammer and with the counterintelligence division, with Peter Strzok and some of the other issues. I want you to really talk to our listeners and kind of lay out the case of why and how deeply and how totally the system has been taken over and how they have tried to destroy Donald Trump and, of course, Michael Flynn and anybody who's been trying to help Trump. We've spent 3.5 years where our government has been neutered at fighting back against the New World Order, and that's really what they were trying to do. They were trying to neuter the Trump administration to the point where there wasn't going to be a whole lot of impact, and then the idea they're going to come back and win this year so that they can continue and slam dunk us into the New World Order.
Well, one of the most important discoveries that we came across was the connection between the hoax Trump-Russia collusion investigation, which was led by Peter Strzok and James Comey, and Brennan in the background. Of course, Obama is sort of the godfather overseeing everything. Between this Trump-Russia collusion hoax and between Dennis Montgomery's whistleblower case. So as Mary was explaining, the Hammer was originally a foreign surveillance tool. It was commandeered by John Brennan and James Clapper, who transformed this foreign surveillance system, which was supposed to protect the U.S. from foreign adversaries and keep our troops safe on the battlefield, by intercepting communications of terrorists and others, and then turning it against the American people. So Dennis Montgomery decided that he didn't want to be involved with this, and he wanted to alert the government that this was going on, that there was a rogue operation happening inside the Obama administration with domestic surveillance on an unprecedented scale. And he beginning in 2013, he took a lot of effort into this. He was sending complaints to all sorts of inspector generals of different agencies, and contacting members of Congress, contacting people from his representatives, and even going so far as to send fax letters to President Obama and Vice President Biden saying, hey, I'm a government contractor. I've witnessed this illegal domestic surveillance. I want to bring this forward. I'd like to bring this out in the open. The American people need to know about this. Now, who was handling this case? It was actually the Department of Justice and the FBI. So it was Dennis Montgomery received 2 limited immunity agreements that were set up by several government officials. It was handled by James Baker, who was the FBI General Counsel, and he worked, by the way, closely with Lisa Page, the FBI attorney. And it was also set up by the Department of Justice. Now, these individuals who were involved in this actually all ended up on the Russia collusion case. So it was a very small circle. Deborah Curtis, who was an assistant United States attorney in Washington, and James Baker, Comey, all these same cast of characters were basically all moved over from Montgomery's case to go after Trump with the Russia collusion case. So just to sort of break down what we're looking at, you have Dennis Montgomery, a whistleblower. He makes an agreement with the government. He comes forward with evidence. What is the evidence he has? It's 47 computer hard drives, encrypted hard drives that, according to Montgomery, contain all sorts of evidence proving that Obama, Brennan, and Clapper were involved in illegal surveillance against Michael Flynn, Donald Trump, judges, the Supreme Court, the FISA court, members of Congress, journalists, business leaders, etc., a wide spectrum of Americans. He brings this evidence. It's then turned over to the FBI at the Miami field office. And who's overseeing that operation? That was overseen by FBI General Counsel James Baker, who sent down FBI special agents to the Miami field office in August of 2015 to take custody of the physical evidence from Dennis Montgomery and his attorney. That evidence then goes back to Washington, D.C., where FBI Director James Comey is running the Bureau. That's 2015. Now then, let's move forward into the future. President Trump announces his candidacy. President Trump wins the nomination. President Trump is elected in the 2016 election. Then, not long after that, they launched this whole Russia collusion investigation with the same cast of characters. Now, what was the specific date that set all of this Russian collusion investigation into motion, into fast forward? That happened in March of 2017. Why is that date important? It's important because of a couple things. At the beginning of March of 2017, Donald Trump on Twitter posted a very famous tweet early in the morning and says that President Obama wiretapped Trump Tower. You remember that. All hell broke loose when he said that. But that set in motion a whole bunch of sequence of events. Shortly thereafter, that was March 4th, 2017. Then on March 7th, 2017, WikiLeaks dumped CIA Vault 7. That was a release of CIA documents involving hacking tools. One of those hacking tools discussed in there was Wild Turkey, and then there was something called HAMR, and then in parentheses it says Hammer. So we consulted with some experts, and there's a lot of evidence that is actually discussing the system that Mr. Montgomery blew the whistle on, the hammer that had been commandeered by Brendan Clapper and Obama. So now we've gone through March 4th, we're going through March 7th. On March 4th, when President Trump tweeted, we actually put out a tweet through the American Report, basically alerting the president and his advisors, because we tweeted to President Trump and to Trump Jr. and other people in his circle about the whistleblower tapes and Dennis Montgomery. So we put that information out there. We then subsequently wrote a story about it at the American Report. The American Report's web servers underwent a cyber attack. The site went down. We did get it back up on March 17th, 2017, on a Friday. We published the story about the whistleblower tapes and Dennis Montgomery. Later that afternoon, Adam Schiff, representative, chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, held a classified meeting. According to reports, they brought in the FBI, and they tried to say, you know, Trump was not spied on. This is when their whole propaganda came out that President Trump never spied on Donald Trump, and oh, by the way, Donald Trump's a Russian agent. That, by the way, that was St. Patrick's Day when Adam Schiff had that meeting, and so it was like a slow weekend in Washington, D.C. Kind of unusual to call in a meeting like that on a holiday weekend. Just a little side note. So we published the story on March 17th. Then on Sunday, March 19th, General James Ace Lyons, four-star admiral retired, who was he was commander of the Pacific Fleet, and that was by the way, that was the second time we had published. We had published a little bit earlier. The website came under cyber attack. We had to get it back up and running. We got the story posted on the 17th. On the 19th, Admiral James A. Flynn brings it to General McInerney. This is about 30. The first time we published, by the way, was about 30 hours after WikiLeaks dropped the Full 7 document dump. So on a Sunday, about 30 hours before. On a Sunday, March 19th, General A. Flynn gets together with General McInerney and brings to General McInerney's attention the story we had written about Dennis Montgomery and the Hammer. They did their own verification. General McInerney went on the air on the Operation Freedom, which is a terrestrial radio program featuring host Dr. Dave Janda. It's out of Michigan. And he goes on the air, and General McInerney reads verbatim, word for word, most of our story about Dennis Montgomery and the Hammer. And he also says specifically, and this is on the whistleblower tapes, that the Hammer was used to wiretap Donald Trump a zillion times. So he wasn't just sort of like incidental collection. He was a major target. It turns out Michael Flynn was a major target as well. Well, interestingly enough, about a year later, you remember there were a lot of text messages that were coming out, text messages between Peter Strzok and Lisa Page. Well, when additional text messages were released, there was a very interesting flurry of text messages on March 19th, 2017. As a matter of fact, shortly after McInerney was on the air, there was a cryptic text message exchanged that really didn't make any sense. It was sort of coded diamonds and sort of asterisks, and it was unreadable. But they were talking about something. Now, the article that McInerney had written, we talk about, that President Trump was wiretapped by the Hammer. So this was a big deal. They didn't want this information out. And here now it's coming from General McInerney, who was formerly the third highest ranking Air Force official at the Pentagon. He had a stellar career, West Point graduate, involved in Vietnam War, surveillance flights during the Cuban Missile Crisis. He was commander of the Alaska Air Defense Zone, basically on the front lines in the Cold War with the Russians. So he had a lot of credibility, tremendous credibility, and A. Flynn's, of course, the biggest military command in the world. So to have these gentlemen of sterling character bringing forward the Hammer story that we had uncovered from the whistleblower tapes, which were secretly recorded audio tapes in which the Hammer was discussed. And so anyway, that's sort of what happened. But Strzok and Page were texting about this, and we've written about that in a coup d'etat. Coup d'etat is one of our stories. And so it really goes, the big takeaway is that the people that are involved in the Trump-Russia investigation are the same people that were involved in the whistleblower case of Dennis Montgomery and the Hammer.
And in General Flynn. Incidentally, Alan, what happened to those 47 hard drives that were required to be turned over by Dennis Montgomery?
That's a very good question. So, according to Montgomery, the FBI basically buried the evidence. It's not known where it is. It was buried.
Wow.
Not only that, Dan, something that's very important is we wrote the Hammer of the hard drives, one particular piece letting the public know that General Flynn had been wiretapped by the Hammer. We put that piece out, and we told how Deborah Curtis, who had joined the Russia collusion with her sidekick, Special Agent Barnett and Special Agent Giardina, who also had joined the Russia collusion investigation. Sydney tweeted that piece right after we wrote it and posted it. And you know what? Within a short amount of time, Deborah Curtis, who was prosecuting General Flynn, stepped down from the case. By the end of that very day, Deborah Curtis left the Department of Justice.
Wow.
Because she was exposed. She was exposed that she had the information about the hammer, which is fruit of the poisonous tree. So she had illegally harvested spying material. She had it in hand. She had questioned Dennis Montgomery at length while under oath and being videotaped about the illegally harvested information. So she knew that General Flynn was being illegally spied upon, and then, utterly illegal, proceeded to prosecute him. By the way, she already knew he hadn't done anything wrong. As the time went on, it was very clear that, you know, they'd changed 302s. Can you imagine Department of Justice attorneys changing the 302s, fabricating 302s to entrap someone and put them in prison? A 3-star general who had devoted 35 years of his life to this country because Barack Obama didn't like him because he'd exposed what he had done with ISIS and Al-Qaeda.
Right. Now explain, Mary, explain what a 302 is to our listeners.
Well, when it was interesting, a 302 is a form that the FBI, when they're investigating something and they're taking testimony, they fill out this form. They're supposed to time. They held the 302 for, I think it was 7 months, Alan, and that was held. And then the original 302 has gone missing, where they told that General Flynn did not lie, that he showed no evidence of lying. And by the way, the whole thing was entrapment. They walk in on the second day they're in office and want to talk to him. And, what does he think? They're coming to welcome him to the White House, the new administration? No, they were there to set him up and put him in prison. Mm-hmm. So, you have this cabal that's worked closely together. And, what is their punishment? Well, now on MSNBC, there's Andrew Weissman and Lisa Page. Now they have gigs on the television to, tell more lies to the American people. But the fact is that Deborah Curtis was exposed. She was in possession of fruit of the poisonous tree. The idea that knowing everything that had taken place, she knew the Russia collusion delusion was fraud, was an utter fraud. A $40 million fraud, by the way, folks. You paid for that. Mm-hmm. The American taxpayer paid for that nonsense. And so Deborah Curtis was part of that. And then she proceeded, after trying to, being a part of a coup d'etat, the first time in America, a coup d'etat in America. She's a part of it. Then she goes to take down a 3-star general until she's exposed. They belong in prison. This was treason. This was sedition. Every one of these same players that were involved in Montgomery taking his evidence, they were taking his evidence, by the way, because the evidence that he held was going to put them in a pretty tight spot to begin with. And so they didn't want this evidence back because they were, they'd attempted to take this evidence from Dennis Montgomery previously in 2006 and 2007 when he was at his company Entrap and he was working as a contractor for the government. And, one day, you'd have people come in, they say they're NSA, but it was always CIA. And they raided his home, tied him to his tree, the Roger Stone treatment, the same treatment that they gave to Kirk Wiebe and Bill Binney, NSA whistleblowers. That kind of treatment where you send in the FBI armed and flakjacks and scare the hell out of you in the middle of the night. And, like Bill Binney put a gun to his head while he's in the shower, that kind of treatment. So they went and did this to Dennis Montgomery because they wanted all the evidence that he held back. They didn't want it in his hands. And they went before Judge Cook, and Special Agent West was brought before Judge Cook, and they were trying to get national security information. And Judge Cook, as she delved into the information, she said, "Wait a minute, you all lied to get a search warrant to raid this man's home, scare the daylight." This is, finally a judge, which may have had to do with the fact that she was going to be retiring, but a judge who actually did the right thing. So she questioned Special Agent West, and she said, "Where's the documents that prove anything that you're saying? Get them to me." And then she found that they were lying. The FBI was lying. She said, "Tell your boss," who was Robert Mueller, "that I'm going to put you in prison for lying." And so she found then, and she said, "You give back everything you took from Dennis Montgomery." And they tried to go over her head and appeal for another hearing, but they didn't get it. So they tried before to get everything away from Montgomery. And in fact, some of the people that were involved in the Maricopa County, because remember, the whistleblower tapes came out of a Maricopa County case where they had been given to federal District Judge G. Murray Snow, and someone dropped those whistleblower tapes. Someone exposed them. The whistleblower tapes, you should understand, the people that are being recorded, it's unbeknownst to them. They don't know, including Dennis Montgomery, that he's being recorded. And he didn't find out that the whistleblower tapes existed until after he recovered from brain surgery and read it in one of our articles. So they had put a lot of effort and attention into entrapping Dennis Montgomery. And so finally, when he came forward with this whistleblower deal for immunity, that's when they took possession of his information with the understanding that they would do something about the criminal behavior that was enumerated on 47 hard drives. And let me tell you, 47 hard drives of evidence, so you understand, if you place, and those become paper documents, if you place one document upon the other of the evidence he turned over, that evidence stood 30 miles high.
Yeah.
That's all illegally harvested information on Americans.
Mary, is there any evidence that Dennis has got backup on any of this stuff? Maybe I shouldn't even ask that question, but
I would never ask that question. I will tell you, he is brilliant, and they have worked assiduously to entrap Dennis Montgomery for a very long time. And it's not just that he doesn't want to be entrapped by these people with very dirty hands. It's that he has said before on a radio program with his one-time attorney, "This is my last stand for America." He understands if these people get away with this, that we no longer exist as a free country.
Yeah.
And I hope people out there are praying for this man. He is a computer genius. What the public knows about the things that he has is minuscule. He has been on the side of America protecting this country like no one has ever done. He has, you'll see in some of the papers, he has command buttons from the Secretary of the Air Force. The top, these are command buttons that people rarely award to anyone. He has protected this country from terrorists for a long time. He has been working as a contractor for the government. He is a computer genius, and I'm assuming he's outsmarted these people for some time, and I hope he continues to do so.
Mm. Yeah, I do too, because this information has got to get out. I'll tell you, I'm terrified for our country. I really am. The fact that we've seen this happen. It's I did a show 4 years ago. We called it "The Laws Are for the Little People," and it was talking about how Obama and Hillary Clinton and all these people get away with all this stuff because they control all the seats of power, the judiciary. They control everything, and they live by a completely different set of rules than the rest of us. Where are we heading on this? I mean, if in fact, let's talk about this.
They don't have, it's not that they have low standards, they have no standards whatsoever.
They have no standards, yeah. Let's talk about what will happen, what you guys see, and I want to hear this from both of you. What you folks see if, in fact, Joe Biden gets elected and the Trump administration goes away. What is our country facing?
Well, Hans Biden, who we've all noticed all those nice pictures of him sniffing children and putting his hands all over them, should scare the daylights out of you. And let me interject. You've got Hillary Clinton, and I'm sure everyone thinks she's a marvelous, wonderful woman that they'd all want to drop their children off to babysit, right? But the woman who says it takes a village, when she's talking about taking a village, that means they want to take control of your children. And so this is communism 101. We take control of everything. And, for those who are left standing, you really want to turn your children and your grandchildren over to these evil people?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, not just that, but the fact that they want to eliminate 93% of the world's population. And I guarantee anybody that's any of our listeners or anybody that has even a crumb of patriotism in it's going to be the people that are going to get targeted.
Well, look at Joe Biden. He obviously is challenged. Not that he's just evil, he's also challenged. Mm-hmm. And he has some form of dementia. So, they're hiding this man in the basement. Talk about bringing a ghoul out. This man, there's no way he can run this country. So who's going to be running it? Kamala Harris? Is that going to be his VP? Is she just another, puppet that the puppet master George Soros, that evil Nazi, is going to be taking over and running this country? Honest to goodness, people, if you don't see what we're looking at, you're looking at such evil. And if these people win, look at Kamala Harris. Look at her history with, Willie, the mayor of San Francisco, her longtime life as a communist. Mm-hmm. These are not your average politicians. These are hardcore communists. And when, I used to think like communists, it's just a political system. No, communism is in itself satanic. Mm-hmm. You're fighting evil.
Absolutely. We've done a radio show, a couple of them, on the fact that Karl Marx was a Satanist. He actually wrote a play that was in tribute to Satan. He openly talked about, and he's written over 100 publications, but the communists, the Soviets, and the communists around the world only have published about 10 of them. It's because the other 90 are so full of satanic and different verses and tributes that it would expose the fact that Marxism is pure Satanism.
Yeah, just like Hitler. Hitler was a Satanist. He was into the dark arts. It's not just, that they believe in Satanism. This is about human sacrifice. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it certainly
these people they're barbarians.
Well, and the pedophilia and all the human trafficking, it all comes together in these same people and the programs that they promote. And yet at the same time, see, this is the thing that's so frustrating about dealing with the left is at the same time that they're talking about how bad we are, they're doing everything that they accuse us of, and yet we aren't doing any of it, and they get away with it.
No. Of course, because the media is just as corrupt as they are. But it's really important to understand, and it's key to watching what's happening before us and what they accuse Donald Trump of. Communists are known for mirroring their own bad behavior onto others. They accuse you of what they themselves are doing.
Right. And incidentally, proof of that is the fact that the Democratic Party, the party of segregation and slavery, all of a sudden they're the people are trying to save society from and making sure Black Lives Matter, when in fact they fought, they were the party of segregation. I think of the guy from West Virginia that was the head of the KKK in that area, Byrd. He was their hero. He was their hero. He was the head of the KKK. Remember, Lincoln was a Republican. He was the one who was freeing the slaves. The head of the KKK is a Democrat. The ones who wanted to bring blacks into the society and make sure they had equal rights were the Republicans. It was the Democrats that did not want that equality. Part of communism is to make sure, just like in the Bolshevik Revolution, that they lie to you about your history. What they're doing right now is removing our history, taking down the statues, taking down the churches. These are the people who don't want you to know your history so that they can conquer and divide you and then kill you. Yeah, as the saying goes, if you don't know your own history, you're bound to repeat it, and that's exactly what's happening right now. Thumper, you had a question that somebody sent in that you felt like was worthy of mention here. Would you like to ask Mary or Alan to respond?
Yeah, and this is for either Mary or Alan, and just for our live chat, they've been asking. I know you introduced Mary and Alan at the beginning of the show, but we have Mary Fanning and Alan Jones, our Dan's guest today, and I'm putting that out in chat for everybody, but just so everybody hears it. Anyway, the question that we got from the folks out there in chat was from when you were talking about the Hammer program, and they want to know who is in control of the Hammer now. Well, that's the $20,000 question. We don't know who's in control of the Hammer now. And if you listen to the whistleblower tapes, which, by the way, if you go, you can find that at theamericanreport.org, the series on that. We've written about 20 articles on the Hammer. They talk about stealing elections. They talk about Brennan and Clapper going into Florida and exchanging discs and stealing the elections in Florida. And so if the American people don't expose the Hammer and this doesn't come to light before the election, I don't know what will happen with the election, because it has the ability to steal elections. It's pretty scary.
That is very
It's real scary. Mm-hmm. So even if the American people stand up, and if these people still have the Hammer in their control, this is why it's imperative that it comes to light, and that and by the way, the idea that of mail-in votes is simply to cover for what they'll steal. So
we have mail-in vote here in Washington State, and it's been election fraud from day one since we got it. So
it's what they're doing in Washington State is I heard you say that there's going to be a recall. It's time to recall the traitor class and get them out of office. Take them out of office.
I absolutely agree, but. What happened here is we've got our number one GOP candidate is Lauren Culp, and he is.
And what's the name again?
Lauren Culp, CULP.
Okay, thanks.
And he's a police chief for a small community up in northeastern Washington called Republic, Washington. And he made a big splash when we passed an initiative a few years back. It was an anti-gun initiative, and it was a horrible one and unconstitutional as any. And he stood up and he said, "Well, I'm declaring my city a sanctuary, Second Amendment sanctuary city, and I will not be enforcing any of this unconstitutional stuff." And that caused a lot of sheriffs across the state to decide whether or not they needed to stand up as well, which they should have, and many of them did. And it was the first phase of figuring out who the rhinos were and who the real sheriffs were. And but he went on Fox News and made a big splash, because he also wrote a book shortly after that called American Cop. And he had a lot of speaking engagements around the state and everything, and people started asking him whether he had any plans to run for governor. And he thought about it, and I had interviewed him on my shows on the channel here a couple of times, and then he decided last summer that he would run for governor, and they developed a campaign. It's a grassroots, ground-up campaign, and he has done extremely well. He's very, very strong over on the west side of the state in the Seattle area, which is typically has been quite liberal in the way they appear to vote. And I say appear to vote. And but he's not a GOP swamp creature. And so,
well, that's a good thing, because you can't trust many of those in the GOP. But beyond that, the state of Washington itself has many of your technocrats working out of there. You have the best high-speed internet in the country because of that. And it seems to me that people in Washington better, the technocracy, even if you're watching what's taking place in YouTube and Twitter and Facebook, your voice is being taken away, your freedom, your right to speak. And if, this is going so fast downhill that the American people must stand up. We have a responsibility. Are we going to be the generation that our parents fought in wars to save this country, and we don't stand up for it on our own home ground?
Yeah, and that's a sad thing.
Speaking of Seattle, Washington.
I beg your pardon?
Speaking of Seattle, Washington, I just want to mention your listeners might be interested in a story that we published a few weeks ago. It can be found at the American Report, and the title of the article is Sacred Communist Ground. Barack Obama lived at the gateway to Seattle's Chaz with Mother Stanley Ann Dunham on Avenue, now patrolled by armed Marxist Revolutionary Guards. So when Barack Obama was very young, according to his life story, he was at an apartment with Stanley Ann Dunham at 516 13th Avenue East in the Capitol Hill district. Now 13th Avenue ran right through Chaz. So there's actually was a checkpoint with these armed Marxist guards on 13th Avenue. And it's very interesting that this is really part of Barack Obama's life story, as far as we understand it.
Yeah, I'm showing our viewers the story right now from that you just spoke about there, Alan. And
it's Barack Obama's own nativity scene.
There you go.
Oh, yeah. Flash that one up. Chairman Mao and the stripper. I can't believe. Mary, we've talked about this before. If it wasn't so bizarre, it would be unbelievable. But the fact is, you cannot make stuff like this up. It is so bizarre, and yet it's so real.
It's the Twilight Zone. I mean, who could have imagined any of this other than Yuri Bezmenov, who warned us who said that they had been using this disinformation and brainwashing techniques, and that our youth would not even know our history and would turn against their own country. So you have, idiots now demanding, communism so that they can be put in the gulag. It's frightening. But we were warned by Golitsyn and Pachepa and Bezmenov, and if people need to just look up on YouTube while they're still there, they've taken so much down, and see what Yuri was warning us of, what this communist incursion was happening into our country and how they were brainwashing our children in the schools. You turn the children against their own parents, you're going to have exactly what was taking place in Nazi Germany. And Dan, we've talked about this. We, for business, go to Germany and East Germany and have for many years. And it's the dead eyes that you would see in those people. And when we'd go into Leipzig and you'd see the police files where one neighbor was reporting another, what you really notice about the leftover, the effects of that are the dead eyes and the dead spirit of the people. We can't let that happen in America.
Well, the thing is, Mary, we can't let it happen, but yet we're seeing it happen before our eyes. And I hate to say it, but people are just so, our country is so afraid to tackle things that challenge their normalcy, that that normalcy bias that they try to live under. And we've got to have people in this country that have the guts to step in and speak and be part of the solution instead of just being part of the problem.
Dan, Admiral Ace Lyons, it's for your audience. What a man. This is a man who had the largest and pleasure of knowing him. And Admiral Ace Lyons used to say to me, Mary, if you don't destroy political correctness, we can never take back the country. Mm-hmm. And that's the truth. Americans need to have freedom of speech, and this idea that you're only allowed to say this, that, or the other thing is anti-American.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the same thing with, all this so-called cultural awareness. Black Lives Matter, sure, all lives matter. All lives matter.
Look at the young mother in Minneapolis. These thugs walked up to her and said, Black Lives Matter, and this beautiful young woman with a little baby said, all lives matter. She was studying to be a nurse. She had gotten through the first portion of her studies. And she said, well, all lives matter, in naivete, that they shot her in the head and killed her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Where is that on the mainstream media news?
Right.
Where is this beautiful young woman who wasn't doing anything wrong, wasn't high on fentanyl, or hadn't been to prison 5 times and hadn't made a bunch of porno movies? And even though those things stood, you still don't have the right to kill anyone, just like George Floyd. We don't know the full story on that yet. But how is it that our country has turned inside out and upside down? It's because this is a communist revolution. Terry Turchi, the FBI agent, he said, understand, and I could not agree with him more. You are watching Bill Ayers' prairie fires. They are lighting this country on fire and destroying it one end to the other to take it over. Stand up, people.
Mm-hmm. And they've been in charge for far too long. So, look, people, we have the majority of people, but it's going to take people with backbones. It's not going to take people that are willing to let this stuff happen. We need to stand up as a society. We need to call our congressmen. We need to write letters. We need to go out and campaign actively for good candidates. We need to put our money where our mouth is. We can't allow this stuff to continue the way it's been going. If we do, we're going to lose this country. It's just that simple.
Beyond which, Dan, I know you are the same way and think the same as I do. We are the American family. I don't say, oh, there's that group and this other group, and let's divide them over here. And we are the American family. I don't look at, those are my black brothers. These are my, pink, green, yellow, whatever. These are my American family. And the idea that they're going to divide us and turn us against one another for a civil war it is evil. It is evil personified.
Well, and Mary, the thing that stands out to me, and I want to get Alan involved in some of this discussion, but the thing that stands out to me is the fact that they lie through their teeth. They hide what they're doing. It's not like they're in the open. They hide all this stuff. And if they were legit, if they weren't a bunch of deceivers and a really evil bunch, they wouldn't have to hide what they're doing. And they could leave it right in the open, and it would bear the test of time.
Well, a perfect example of that is what Joe Biden is doing right now. Remember, this is Joe Biden, who's senior advisor, Anita Dunn, is the Mao worshiper. Joe Biden, whose son Hunter is involved in all these shady deals over in China. And now all of a sudden, his new mantra is made in America. He's like Mr. America First, all of a sudden out of the blue. Does anybody actually believe that?
Well, I certainly don't. No, the thing is what they're doing right now is destroying this country, and doing it by trying to tell the American people they're saving this country. How stupid do you have to be to listen to this nonsense after the facts are out there? Look what happened under the Obama administration. Look at the amount of debt we accumulated, the fact that we had record high unemployment.
Unfortunately, I think Dan's having some
jobs, and this. Am I?
You're good. Back now. You're good.
Yeah, you're back now, Dan.
Well, Mary, I have to tell you, Mary and Alan, we've had all kinds of problems with Zoom. We've had all kinds of problems with YouTube. We've had all kinds of problems with Facebook. You talk about being censored. We've had a lot of problems, haven't we, Thumper?
Oh, there's been more than our share, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. We get deplatformed and we get lots of problems, too. I don't imagine the left is having a lot of problems, do you? The communists, anyway.
Oh, they can post anything they want, They can all kinds of horrible, despicable stuff. And, but if we step out of line, we get the boot.
Yeah, we're the obscenity. Where are the obscenity laws when they're writing all these filthy slogans on American statues and the sides of buildings and burning police cars and doing all this stuff? Where's the censorship for all the corrupt stuff they're doing? Yet we speak the truth. We get shut down.
Well, this is the global communists at work. This isn't just out of this country. These are the global communists that are going to strip bare and redistribute America and get rid of the American people. And this is exactly what took place in the Bolshevik Revolution. This is what they did when they took over that, Russia and turned it into the Soviet Union. And they are brutal. They kill, and this is our time to stop it now.
Well, and Mary, think about, you're mentioning the Bolshevik Revolution. People came home that were middle-class people in Russia in 1918. They came home and found out that there were like 8 families living in the house that they owned. And they had absolutely no voice in how that happened. They became basically just servants in their own home.
Oh yeah, I mean this we know what they're coming for. We know this Agenda 2130. No private property. They'll take away your home. They'll take away everything. They'll take away your children. This whole idea of moving everyone into the cities, you know, and right now what we're hearing is a plan to destroy the suburbs to make it one big metropolitan area. So now your taxpayer dollars don't make any difference of your funding of your local schools or anything else. This is Barack Obama's, the plan he had when he came in and had the audacity to say to the American people that he was here to transform America.
No, it looks like Dan might have frozen up again.
Well, it must be Obama on the phone.
Oh, they are. You know, I tried to talk to him on the phone here earlier today, and his phone kept. He couldn't even keep a phone connection going. So that was the trouble he's having. We're lucky he's been as consistent as he has been throughout the show. So, however. What I'd like to do is just say thank you so much for joining us, because we're getting to the top of the hour, and we have our next show coming up. So I want to say thank you from Dan and myself and Patriot Soapbox. Thank you so much for joining us, Mary and Alan. And I'm sure that Dan will be in touch if we turn over the show before he gets back online here.
Yeah. Well, thank you for all you're doing. Thank you for having us again.
Absolutely.
We appreciate it. Dan is always a great interview. He's so well informed, as are you. And I'm so glad that you're working on the ground in Washington.
Yes. I am. Dan's back there. So
I made it back. I'm sorry, folks. I don't know. I've had a really unstable Zoom platform today. But Mary and Alan, thank you so much. And I think you see our mutual friend Patrick Howley is on right after me. And Patrick, Mary, you're the one that introduced me to Patrick. It's been a couple of years ago.
I did indeed. He's a great patriot, and please give him our best thoughts and wishes. I'm so glad, Dan, that you're reaching out to the American people, because you carry a message like nobody else can. You're so well informed.
Well, thank you for that. But I'll tell you what, I always feel humbled by your presence, because you and Alan are so incredibly well informed. Patrick, I see you're on, ready to go. And so, Mary Allen, thank you again for helping us connect the dots. Mary, you might want to stay on and watch Patrick's show for a while. He has the campaign show, and he's coming up right now.
I will indeed.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mary and Alan.
Thank you, Thumper. It's nice to be with you.
Come back anytime.
And we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence.
It was 1776 when the founders signed the writ of independence from the Brits. It was revolution. Now an enemy from within would enslave us all again and deprive us of our rights in the Constitution. Restore the Republic. Wake up, it's time to understand. Restore the Republic. We're losing our freedom